Women's Day, South Africans are being urged to reflect sincerely on creating an inclusive and mutually respectful existence in business. Joining us to reflect on how South Africa can grow beyond the paradigm of otherness is Black Business Council General Secretary and Champion of Equality and Representation, Judy Nwokedi. Judy, very good afternoon. Good to speak to you on this Women's Day. I had a chance to read your opinion piece, and you talk about otherness. Take us through what that actually means.
I think before I take you into why I have penned my piece as women as other to men is because this is the paradox of patriarchy, that if we are seen as an other and not as a whole, we will continue to operate on the margins. We constitute 30.5 million people in South Africa, 51% of the population. Yet we have to fight for us, for our place at the table, for our space on airwaves, and we fight just to be heard. But I want to ask you this as a male, and to all your male viewers today, to all of you, this is my question. If you were to create an invoice for all the unpaid and unrecognized work that you do, how much would you earn daily? Calculate that on an average. You know what is the average wage? It's under 30 Rand an hour. Do you know where your partner puts the sugar? Do you know where the socks are kept? And do you know that Chardonnay is a wine and not the name of your housekeeper? And this is why I talk about the other. I have you stumped there.
I didn't know if it was rhetorical or you actually wanted me to answer that. But I suppose you do have a point that not all men are engaged, certainly in the household. So point made clear. But how do we counter these issues? You know, I'm of the mindset that in order to sit at the table, it's not really going to be given to you. You know, you've got to fight it. We talked about the 1956 women and the march by 20,000. That is the greatest indication that it's not about conversations. It's about a battle of sorts, not necessarily physical, but isn't it necessary to go out and grasp it or take it, if you will?
Well, this is my challenge, that if we keep having this debate along the lines of how the conversation has been structured, even your articulation of surely you've got to go out there and fight for it. We have been fighting for it since 1956, and indeed even before 1956. So this is the question. Men have the power. Now we have to fight to take the power away from them. And that is the paradox of patriarchy. Power is not a noun. Power is not a possession. Power should be a verb, and we should all be entitled to it. So we have been fighting last year. It was the Black Business Council's Women's Alliance that challenged the presidency around the procurement framework. And he articulated that today again, that he's now called on the private sector to rise to the occasion and ensure that 40% of all procurement favors women. Favors women, is given to women, is ring-fenced for women, are considered set-asides. So we have a framework, and it is called a gender-responsive public policy procurement budgeting framework. So the framework is there, and we fight every day in business, I can assure you, to get even 10% of the 40% that has been earmarked or ring-fenced for us. So last year, not only did we ask for the 40% minimum, I must say 40% minimum procurement for women, but also to say that all panels, all structures in government, all government institutional machinery should have women on the panels, the judiciary, 40% at a minimum, and that is what we will continue to fight for. But we're also saying that men and women, we need to find the common ground without enmity so that we can all get along with the unending journey of inequality. Because inequality, unemployment, the high rates of unemployment amongst women, I mean, are you aware of it? Are we aware of the fact that, let's just look at the Joburg Stock Exchange, 14% of all listed companies are occupied by women. 14%. Where's that in relation to 40%? Now, here is the damning statistic. Of that 14%, 1% of the 14% are black, colored, and Asian women. And women earn 30% less than men. So surely the fight should be for men to say, we want to change this arrangement. This structural arrangement gets none of us anywhere. And let me just share this with you, that you cannot easily fit women into a structure that is already coded as male. You have to change the structure. That means that we've got to think about power differently and decouple it from public prestige or from the domain of male. It means we need to think collaboratively around power, the power of followers and not only of leaders. It needs all of us to think differently about power so that this attribute can be enjoyed by all of us. So power we cannot say, yes, you say, we need to fight for a seat at the table. Now, this is an experience of most women in boardrooms and in meetings. You make a point, you make a valid contribution, and some man at the table will say, I'm going to continue where I left off. It's as if you haven't spoken. There is this void that when a woman speaks, her voice disappears into the ether and men continue where they've left off. Or, what is even more ironic, and that is what I experience every week, you make the most profound takeout. You come up with a suggestion that can change a business model. And some man will say, Vusi said, not Judy said, but Vusi said. So we continue to be silenced when men drown us out. And so this has been part of the struggle. But the 40% is an absolutely, we can't fault that. Obviously, we will say that we want procurement to be where the excellence is, change the back end of supply chain. So the 40% does get us to the finishing line in no uncertain terms.
Judy, there's power in numbers. You know, there's power in women. You talked about the population of women in the country, and women coming together and acting in unison and speaking with one voice and choosing, for instance, not to patronize certain businesses or certain products. I mean, we've seen it countless times where there is angst because of advertising, for instance, around particular issues and stuff. Basically, people have commandeered attention from those brands and businesses because they've spoken with a single voice. Do you feel that that is potentially an angle for you to take? And the reason I say this is because amongst men themselves, men are selfish. Men refuse to share with other men. They do not encourage men.
Well, why would you want to give power away? And that is why I say if we keep thinking of power as a possession, then of course white men don't want to cede power to black men don't want to cede power to white men, and definitely pale male and grey or ebony male and grey is not going to cede that power to any woman, whether you black, whether you white. So yes, the collective strength, and that is why 20,000 women marched in 1956, and we as women continue to march. But I mean, this is why we say that the paradox of patriarchy is that when men become conscious and men stop acting from a position of toxic masculinity or in a misogynist way, then all of us benefit. And when I talked about unpaid work, you know, it's not just the cooking and the cleaning, it's caring for the sick and caring for the elders. So when our young boys in South Africa, our young men, begin to see other men coming to the party, representing, showcasing a different way of being in the world, of being a gentle man, being a caring man, then we will not see a South African woman raped murdered every 3 hours, 116 women raped every day, because that is the ultimate expression of power.
Now, Judy, you've explained to us some of the challenges that women face, certainly in the boardroom. Now, let's talk about corporate South Africa in general and some of the other challenges that women face because they are women in the workplace. sexual harassment, for instance?
Yes, of course. You know, it's when you make a decision to expose a man who has sexually harassed you, God forbid, raped you, that is almost what they call career suicide, because the chances of you then proceeding in that particular company or in that particular organization is very slim. So, you know, with all the challenges we have in the country, the triple challenge, the triple epidemic around HIV, tuberculosis and HIV, many are saying, you know, we have too many other issues, so that the focus of sexual harassment, bullying, microaggression. I mean, I talked about the way in which your voice often is not heard in a meeting. So this is a form of harassment. It is aggression. And of course, the most extreme aggression is when a young ESCOM engineer, a young engineer is raped at a power station. I mean, that is the ultimate expression of that sexual harassment. So you are protected to a degree by, you know, the confines of the establishment of a beautiful boardroom, a building. But when you're working in a factory, or when you're working within the taxi industry, or when you're working in the bus company, we know that women say that sex is transacted. In order to get you where you want to be, it is made very clear that a sexual transaction has to happen. And that is when it comes to procurement as well. And we have had studies that have revealed the extent at municipal level, at provincial level, how women have to trade. And some women just say, I would rather go hungry than trade sex to get this contract, because it will not stop there. It will continue. So yes, of course, the numbers and the extent of sexual harassment in the workplace has been overtaken in the last 18 months by COVID, now with the violence in South Africa, where other issues are now at the table, occupying center space.
Judy Nwokedi, Secretary General of the Black Business Council, thank you kindly for your time this afternoon. Very intriguing conversation.